The Golden State Warriors have been one of the most intriguing teams of the offseason, and they still have to make their biggest decision. In a bizarre twist from past summers, the NBA offseason has been dominated by restricted free agency. With a handful of teams still navigating the best path forward, the Warriors might have the highest profile situation as they try to find a solution to their Jonathan Kuminga problem. Throughout the summer, Kuminga has demanded a deal similar to some of the league's other young stars, hoping for something in the $30 million per year range. However, the Warriors haven't been willing to budge and don't want to pay so much for a player who has had a tough time cracking Steve Kerr's rotation. Will the Warriors consider a sign-and trade? Considering Kerr's unwillingness to give Kuminga a consistent role, the likeliest outcome originally seemed to be a sign-and trade. However, the Warriors haven't been willing to budge on their trade demands. Already declining a deal from the Sacramento Kings for Malik Monk and a protected first-round pick, the Warriors' asking price certainly isn't cheap. As Fansided's G.C. Belchamber recently noted, the Kings have also been rumored to go after Austin Reeves, with Jovan Buha reporting that Sacramento doesn't have the assets to make that type of deal. Considering Kuminga certainly believes he is at least in the same tier as Reeves, and the Warriors likely expecting that type of compensation, there might not be any offer that Sacramento could make this offseason that would be good enough for Golden State. Should the Warriors and Kings revisit talks during the season after Kuminga potentially signs the 2-year, $45 million deal that Golden State offered, it might be easier to strike a deal with the sign-and-trade restrictions no longer an issue. However, this summer might simply drag on as the Warriors and Kuminga try to come to some type of agreement. The New Orleans Pelicans reshaped their roster this offseason with a series of moves, but none were as controversial as their decision to trade for Golden State Warriors guard Jordan Poole. Bleacher Report's Dan Favale predicted that the transaction would go down among the worst off-season moves by any team, as he highlighted Poole's defensive shortcomings. The Pelicans' decision to jettison C.J. McCollum's expiring contract for Jordan Poole and Saddiq Bey, wrote Favale of the Pelicans' off-season move. Poole is coming off an encouraging campaign, but his offensive stock is nothing if not turbulent. He's not a true floor general, and the defense with any combination of him, Queen, Fears, and Zion Williamson will be a big woof. Bey is a good shooter, but he's not much of a defender himself, and he's coming back from a torn left ACL that cost him all of 2024-25. On top of all that, the ever-cost-conscious Reed, notoriously stingy, Pelicans are adding over $40 million to their 2026-27 books for reasons that are, at best, not entirely clear, and at worst, completely non-existent. Poole had a bounce-back season. As the writer alluded to, the former Warriors guard had a breakout season in the 2024-26, averaging a career-high 20.5 points, 4.5 assists and 3.0 rebounds at decent shooting splits of 43/38/83. Poole averaged 3.5 made threes per game, which ranked 9th in the league, behind only Stephen Curry, Anthony Edwards, Malik Beasley, Brandon Miller, LaMelo Ball, Luka Doncic, Derek White, and Jason Tatum. However, Poole's defensive shortcomings were much too hard to ignore. The high-scoring guard ranked 382nd in the league in defensive rating, as the Washington Wizards allowed 117.9 points per 100 possessions when he was on the floor. Still, Poole's offensive numbers saw a significant tick from the 2023-24 season, when he averaged 17.4 points at mediocre shooting splits of 41/32/87. Pelicans expected to stay in lottery. Despite their aggressive offseason move, the Pelicans are not expected to compete for a playoff berth in the 2025-26 season. Oddsmakers have set the over-under of wins total at 31.5 games, a year after Zion Williamson and company won just 21 games. Those projections also take into consideration that All-Star guard DeJounte Murray is unlikely to suit up for the team as he recovers from a torn Achilles. ESPN's Zach Cram explained why the Pelicans are likely to trend down again in 2025-26. What is the realistic best-case scenario for New Orleans this season, with injury risks across the roster and DeJounte Murray already recovering from a torn Achilles? Asked Cram. The Pelicans last finished in the top 6 in the Western Conference standings in 2018. That was so long ago that players on New Orleans' roster included Tony Allen, Josh Smith, Emeka Okafor, Omer Asik, and Jameer Nelson, it might as well have been a different era of NBA basketball. With apologies for piling on the Pelicans for the strangest trade of the summer, when they sent an unprotected 2026 first-round pick from either themselves or the Bucks to Atlanta in exchange for moving up from number 23 to number 13 in the 2025 draft, there's simply way more downside than upside in 2025 to 26. Even when Zion Williamson played this past season, the Pelicans went 10-20, a 27-win pace that would have given them a top 10 pick. Following a gruesome battle, the Miami Heat ended up coming out on top following a 4-3 series win over the Boston Celtics. The Heat were led by none other than the phenomenal Jimmy Butler, who spearheaded the team's 2023 NBA Finals run. Speaking of the series, one moment featuring Celtics Al Horford stuck with NBA fans. Jimmy Butler and Al Horford took jabs at each other. Heading into the series, the Celtics were viewed as the favorites to represent the conference in the NBA Finals. After all, the previous year, the Celtics had reached the NBA Finals, albeit losing to the Golden State Warriors. As a result, the C's were beaming with confidence. This led to Horford mocking the Heat after making a three-pointer in Game 1 of the series. Horford urged the Heat to take a timeout. As expected, Jimmy Buckets took offense to it and ensured to clap back at Horford with a similar play in Game 3 of the series. After that, Butler imitated Horford by pulling off a timeout celebration. The Heat were in the driving seat as they took a 3-0 lead in the series. While the C's tied things up at 3-3, Miami ultimately prevailed with a blowout 103-84 win in Game 7. 2 years later, Jimmy Butler and Al Horford can become teammates. Last season, Butler was traded to the Golden State Warriors following a fallout with the Heat. While Jimmy elevated the team during the regular season, the Dubs were outplayed in the postseason. Despite that, the Warriors haven't made any moves during the offseason. However, they've been heavily linked to Horford post to Celtics exit. According to NBA insider Brandon "Scoop V" Robinson, the Warriors have reached a verbal agreement with Horford. The only hindrance is Jonathan Kuminga's stalemate with the organization. Once that's resolved, Butler and Horford are likely to become teammates on the Warriors.